Hello, you absolute legends. Jump King is a simple game with a simple goal. According to legends, there is a smoking hot babe at the top, and I mean, what more incentive do you really need? The player must try to reach her by jumping his way through various terrains, obstacles, and settings. It's been described as one of the hardest games ever made, in the same vein as games like Getting Over It or Pogo Stuck. The entire point of the game is that it's hard. It will make you mad. You will fall, you will fail, and it's going to suck. As with other popular rage games, YouTube is full of clips from creators going ballistic after making a single mistake and losing all of their progress. Jump King is a very difficult game, but not because it's unfair or because the controls are bad, it's because the constant precision required is so high. You need to make hundreds of jumps to reach the top, and many of them need almost frame-perfect inputs to work. But to compensate, the player has an insane amount of control over Jump King's jumps, so if you do have the skill, it's a game you can eventually master. And it's games like this that are perfect breeding grounds for speedrunning competition. Hundreds of people compete in Jump King trying to reach the top in the quickest time, and for the past several years, murmurs have been stirring about doing something that up until very recently was considered impossible. Since 2021, the world record for reaching the top has only been a few seconds away from the 4-minute barrier. The idea of beating Jump King in under 4 minutes first began as a simple meme. No one seriously thought it could be done, but by 2023, the record was only 1 second away. 1 second isn't a long time, but in Jump King, it's an eternity. And after literally thousands of hours of attempts, on the 23rd of March 2024, the speedrunner Trimp became the first person in history to break the 4-minute barrier. Forget the 4-minute mile. The 4-minute Jump King is the most important and relevant 4-minute barrier that's ever been broken. I'm not joking when I say that Trimp's run of 3 minutes and 59 seconds is one of the most precise speedruns ever done. And in today's video, we are going to learn why this new record is so special, what made 4 minutes so difficult to beat, and why Jump King speedruns are some of the toughest and most challenging you could ever do. I really hope you enjoy. Now legends, today I am here to dispel a disgusting stigma that's been haunting me for my entire life. Apparently just because I'm a nerd, that means I'm supposed to build my own PC. Well, no, I refuse. And if you're like me and you want to finally get that beautiful PC upgrade, but you can't be bothered building it yourself, you need to get one from StarForge Systems. StarForge makes things super easy. They offer the best pre-built PCs at all different price points. So if you go in with a certain budget, you know you're going to get the most you possibly can for your money. StarForge PCs are used by tons of your favorite creators, they look amazing, and they run smoothly. Plus they are reliable, including a full 2-year part and labor warranty. And if you really want to look cool, they even offer incredible custom cases. Don't let those super nerds try and make you feel bad just because you don't want to build your own PC. I put off upgrading my PC for years because I didn't want to build one, which is why I was so happy when StarForge sent me mine. And the one they sent me is amazing. Getting a new PC is always the greatest feeling, so please go and spoil yourself. The link to StarForge Systems will be in the description. Go and check out their PCs, and thanks to StarForge for sponsoring this video. If you've never played Jump King before for yourself, it looks really basic. The aesthetic is of a simple platformer, and all you have to do is make it to the top without falling down. But it's not until you play the game that you realize things aren't what they seem. For some reason, while these jumps look easy and straightforward, they are immensely difficult to do. The reason is because the jump mechanic in Jump King has many more iterations than in standard platformers. In most games, a character may only have 1 or 2 jump variations, depending on how long you hold the jump button for. There might be a low jump if you just tap the jump button, and a high jump if you hold the jump button down. So jumping height is very easy to control. In Jump King, there are 35 different iterations of jump height, and the height of the jump will differ down to the individual frame. In practice, if you hold the jump button, Jump King will prepare to jump. If you continue to hold the jump button down after 35 frames, Jump King will automatically jump at the maximum height. If you release the jump button before 35 frames have passed, the height will be determined by the amount of frames the jump button was held for. And once Jump King has jumped, the player loses all control until he lands again. Jump King runs at approximately 60 frames per second, so 35 frames is only a bit more than half a second. Having 35 different possible jump heights within a half a second period means that it's very difficult to consistently control Jump King's height for most people. If they are just a few frames off, he will either jump too high or too low, and he will inevitably fall. And the game is designed in such a way where there are many jumps that require a high level of precision. But while the game already requires precise play just to complete, speedrunning is where things get taken to the extreme. Jump King only has 3 buttons to worry about: left, right, and jump. So the game isn't about complex controls, it's all about timing. It's very similar to a game like Geometry Dash, where the best players are the ones that can time their inputs more accurately than everyone else. Timing isn't just important for successfully jumping to the next platform, it's important for how quickly you can do it. Obviously, if you don't hold down the jump button for long enough, you won't make the height and you will fall. So for any particular jump, there is a number that represents the minimum amount of frames you can hold down the jump button and still make it up. Theoretically, this is the optimal number, because any frame after this point is wasted in not moving while Jump King prepares to make the jump. Beyond that, in many circumstances, holding the jump button down for longer than you need to also loses time because you will jump higher, and thus remain in the air for longer. And you can't start preparing for the next jump until you land. So you actually lose time twice. Once in the fact that you could have jumped earlier, and twice in the fact that now you're stuck in the air for longer than you needed to be. If you're jumping back and forth between left and right, the mistakes compound. Because if you jump more than you need to the right, now you have to make up that distance back to the left, or you won't make the next jump, which means for the second jump, you again need to hold down the jump button for longer to compensate. A single frame makes a big difference. If you hold down the jump button for a single frame longer than you need to, you end up losing approximately 1/10 of a second, which is around 6 frames. So over the course of a full run, which involves hundreds of jumps, you can see how easy it is to lose multiple seconds just because some of your jumping was only a 60th of a second off. Another way you could try to fix suboptimal jumping is by simply walking back into the correct position once you've landed. And in the older records, you'll find plenty of instances where they walk Jump King after landing to put him into the desired location for the next jump. But this style of play is far slower. For starters, jumping speed is faster than walking speed, so you lose time horizontally. But also, again, you want to be preparing to jump as much as possible because the idea is to go up. Any time that you're not preparing for the next jump when you could be is time lost. So as years went on, players walked and walked less. And in theory, it's best to never walk under any circumstances. However, of course, in order to achieve the ultimate goal of walking less, this means your jumps have to be more and more precise, and the difficulty level begins to skyrocket. This theory of optimal jumping applies to all areas except for one, which is the area called Stormwall Pass, just past the halfway mark. In this section, wind blows left and right, which has a great impact on Jump King's sideways momentum. Some jumps require the assistance of wind to make the distance, and other jumps are impossible to do while the wind is blowing against you. This ends up impacting speedruns dramatically, because it means you have to wait for the wind to be blowing in the correct direction. The wind works on a cycle, which begins when you first load into a game. The wind will blow to the left for 6.5 seconds, and then blow to the right for 6.5 seconds. This creates a 13-second cycle, and because many jumps in this area require the wind to be blowing in the correct direction, it means that if you miss a cycle, you have to wait for the next one. Ultimately, this means that if you reach this area faster and catch an earlier cycle, you can reach the top 13 seconds quicker. Back in the early days of Jump King speedrunning, there was a particular cycle that people assumed was the quickest you could catch, and this was called a one cycle, because it was the first available. At the beginning of 2020, the world record was 4 minutes and 33 seconds held by Cookie Crisp. But then Cookie Crisp did something incredible and was so quick through the first half that he managed to enter Stormwall Pass one cycle earlier than anyone had before, and he was able to achieve a new record of 4 minutes and 26 seconds. You can see that on his old record, the time is exactly 13 seconds slower leaving that area. Now, that doesn't mean you're going to reach the very top 13 seconds faster, however, because you obviously still need to make no mistakes. This was the first time in history anyone had managed to catch the faster cycle, and so the nerves would have been extreme, and Cookie Crisp took the end very safely, just to ensure that he could at least finish the run without falling and get a new record. Instead of renaming this new faster cycle a 1 cycle and moving everything else down, they decided just to subtract 1 and call it a 0 cycle. By March 2021, players had become much better at the game, which meant they were making the 0 cycle far more often, which enabled them to optimize the end even more. It makes intuitive sense that if you can make it to the end more consistently, you'll have more opportunities to break the record. And the record was now a 4:15, held by Trimp using the 0 cycle. At this point in time, a 4-minute run was still out of the question, because even if you did the first half so fast you could make an earlier win cycle, you'd still, after all of that, have to do the end 2 seconds faster as well. On the 14th of March 2021, Trimp did, however, achieve the first half of this equation. For the first time in history, he reached Stormwall Pass quick enough to make it through 1 cycle earlier. Again, as was the case with Cookie Crisp, because this was a world first, Trimp took the end very safely and only lowered the record by 3 seconds. This new faster cycle is called a -1 cycle, and this weird numbering scheme is now a funny relic of the earliest speedruns. Accounting for the 13-second gain by reaching this new faster cycle, it meant that the record could now foreseeably go down to a time of 4 minutes and 2 seconds. And 2 years later, in 2023, they had even managed slightly better, with the record now sitting at 4 minutes and 1 second. But this is where things get exponentially more difficult. Unlike the 0 cycle, catching a -1 cycle never became easy. The route had essentially been solved by this point, meaning there was no new strategies to implement. The only way to gain time was just to basically be more precise with your inputs. Presently, over 1,000 people have submitted speedruns to the leaderboards, and only the top 16 players have ever caught this fastest cycle. The best players still need to grind hard for each and every opportunity to reach the second half. And that's been the difficulty for the past 3 years, because not only is it almost impossible to do the end quick enough to finish in under 4 minutes, but just getting a chance to do it in a run doesn't come very often. To give you an idea about what kind of precision is required for a sub 4, we can look at the tower section just before we reach the top. In order to not lose a significant amount of time, which would make sub 4 impossible, the player must perform 13 consecutive frame perfect jumps. And again, this is at around 60 frames per second. Because of the geometry of the platforms, if you are a single frame late on any of these jumps, you will lose up to 1/3 of a second, which is time you simply cannot afford. And this is just one single 10-second stretch, which just happens to be right before the very end. So you can imagine the nerves at this point of the run as well. At the beginning of 2024, things really started to heat up, as 2 runners in particular, Trimp and Casu, started trading world records, and by March, both players were within a second of sub 4. In fact, by mid-March, the world record was sitting at 4 minutes and 6/1000ths of a second, held by Trimp, less than a single frame away from the 4-minute barrier. This led to one of the most heartbreaking fails I've ever seen in speedrunning. On the 22nd of March, Trimp made it to the very end screen easily on sub 4 pace, and by easily, I mean he would be able to scrape under by a couple of frames. At the end, he made the large jump to the top as players do, and then a smaller jump to reach the end zone. But he landed a single pixel short, and thus the game didn't end. And in this screenshot, you can see Jump King just standing there with the timer showing 3:59.8. Now what's funny is that all Trimp had to do was hold right, and he simply would have walked over the finish line and gotten the world's first sub 4. But for some reason, he thought his jump was big enough, so he didn't even bother holding right. It's the speedrunning equivalent of celebrating too early. Thankfully, this story does have a happy ending, when the very next day, Trimp made it to the top once again on sub 4 pace. And this time, he wasn't going to make the same mistake twice. And on the 23rd of March 2024, Trimp beat Jump King and reached the Smoking Hot Babe in 3 minutes and 59.989 seconds, a single frame below 4 minutes. Personally, I had never played Jump King, so when I first heard about Trimp's sub 4, I didn't understand why this run was so incredible. But as I tried to play the game for myself, and I learned about the mechanics, it became immediately obvious that this speedrun is a massive accomplishment. While the run is brief, it requires near-perfect timing and precision the entire way through, and it's a level of precision that makes me wonder how it's even humanly possible. I've been in the speedrunning scene for 25 years now, and I still get surprised at the level of skill and mastery that top players are able to achieve in these games, and it never ceases to amaze me. A huge congratulations to Trimp for the run. I will put a link to the full thing in the description. Thank you so much for watching, you legends. I hope you're having a fantastic day, and I will see you in the next video.